Let's react.
This album should never have existed. Everyone involved was breaking up, and somehow they made one of the greatest albums of all time. 2 couples, 4 breakups, and one album that sold over 40 million copies worldwide. Now imagine recording an album while your bandmate is singing about breaking up with you, while you are standing 3 feet away. At one point, this album was said to be so toxic it almost collapsed the band entirely. But instead, it became a legend. But make no mistake, this isn't a love album, it's a breakup album, made by people who still had to work together every single day. This is the making of the album that should never have been. Rumours. You were in for a ride, guys. In 1975, the band finally found a lineup that clicked. After years of revolving doors and shifting styles, the American duo of Lindsey Buckingham and Stevie Nicks. When you added this two to the British core of Mick Fleetwood, John McVie, and Christy McVie, you had a super band. Their first album together, titled Fleetwood Mac, was a runaway success. The album climbed the charts and gave them their first taste of superstardom in the United States of America. It was a time of immense hope and promise. Now let's talk about the mid-70s music world, excess and ambition. Rock stars as modern royalty, the industry flush with cash, and Fleetwood Mac poised to capture it all. The sound is what you could describe as a cross of British blues and rock, along with sun-drenched California pop harmonies. And this was a formula that resonated with a massive audience. They toured relentlessly, and their live shows were legendary. Now, things are starting to get interesting. We're gonna talk about cracks in the family. From the outside, the band looked like a tight-knit family, but behind the curtains, bonds were starting to fray, stretched thin by fame and complicated hearts. As 1976 dawned, there were plans to make a follow-up album to the massively successful Fleetwood Mac self-titled album. As one would expect, expectations from the band themselves and the record company, as well as the fans, were huge and daunting. A global audience was waiting. The band were living in a newly found whirlwind. Concerts, travels, and newly found wealth. They were young, famous, and they were on top of the world. But success created perfect conditions for a personal implosion. The initial feeling on entering the studio was initial optimism from the whole band. There were 3 songwriters, Stevie, Lindsey, and Kristen. All 3 were confident that they could make great music and provide a suitable follow-up to the successful Fleetwood Mac album. But there was something they couldn't predict, that the studio will become a battlefield. The songs became diary entries, public accusations, desperate pleas, all set to some of the most endearing melodies ever recorded. Guys, it was something. The calm was about to break in the most spectacular way ever imagined. Now we move on to 4 Hearts Breaking, the emotional core of Fleetwood Mac. The emotional core of Fleetwood Mac was built on 2 romantic partnerships, and as they began to work on their album, both relationships were disintegrating. The longest running relationship was between bassist John McVie and keyboardist as well as vocalist Christine McVie. They had been together for almost 8 years. After nearly 8 years together, their bond had been eroded by strains of constant touring and the rock and roll lifestyle. Their communication had broken down, replaced by a tense professional silence. They would arrive at the studio separately and speak only when necessary about musical matters. This were supposed to be a team, remember? They avoided eye contact, creating a palpable chill that presided over the whole recording process. The love that had once been the foundation of the band was now a source of quiet and constant pain. At the other end of the spectrum was a fiery, passionate, deeply intertwined relationship of Lindsey Buckingham and Stevie Nicks. These two had been a couple long before they joined Fleetwood Mac. They were a musical duo that had sacrificed everything for their art. Their love was as intense as their legendary arguments, and the sudden explosion of fame had amplified every crack in their foundation. To record the album, the band decamped to the record plant in Sausalito, California. It was a state-of-the-art studio, but it will become their prison. It would become their sanctuary. The studio had no windows, and it was a wooden, paneled room. It was designed to keep the outside world out and the music in. But that isolation intensified the interpersonal drama. They spent 12 to 14 hours a day locked in that space. I just can't imagine what that must have felt like for people who were not getting on. They rented a house nearby, but the conflicts followed them home. The experience became a relentless cycle of work, arguments, and sleepless nights, and exhaustion. And remember, this was the 1970s, a decade full of excesses. They all had short tempers, and their paranoia heightened. I'll leave you to guess what might have fueled all that. All kinds of stories came from the sessions rather, and they were all legendary stories. But one thing stood out. Amidst all this, the music became a form of communication, and the songwriting turned into a weapon. The band members started writing songs directly about each other. They were using the lyrics to say things that they could not say to each other face to face. It was a brutal public airing of grievances. One of my favorite songs from the band, a song called You Can Go Your Own Way by Lindsey Buckingham, seems to be the one with the most direct attack. Before I knew about the band, about all the dynamics, I never knew or imagined for a second that the song came about in that way. I thought it was just a song that was written, by a band, as you get. But when I found out what this was all about, it was shocking. I found out the song was a raw, snarling anthem and anger directed towards Stevie Nicks. There was a particular lyric that was so hard-hitting, directed at Stevie, and she begged Lindsey to please leave out this lyrics, but he refused to do so. This particular lyrics is the line that said, "Packing up, shacking up is all you want to do." She begged him, he refused to take it out. Every time she had to sing harmonies on that track, she was forced to sing along to her own character assassination. I don't know how she did that. I don't think I would do that. I would refuse point blankly to sing that. I'm sorry. So how did Stevie react? She didn't react in the same way, not with anger. I think her own reply was more graceful. She came up with an ethereal masterpiece, a softer jam, and the song was called Dreams. Maybe bad dreams, but dreams all the same. Dreams was a softer and more philosophical take on their breakup. It was written by her in a few minutes when there was a break by the band and the studio was like empty. She put the song together in a few minutes. In the song, she was saying to Lindsey that while he was free to go his own way, he'll be haunted by what is losing and what is leaving behind. So that tells me that that Stevie wanted to be together still. It was Lindsey who wanted to leave. And a line or two that I really liked from that song was when she said, "Now here you go again, saying you want your freedom, and who am I to keep you down?" The lines were delivered with a calm and steady voice that you will hardly imagine what she was going through deep within. It was said that when she played the demo to the band, the room fell in silence. They all recognized the power of the song, the melancholic beauty. Despite all the tension that was in the air, they knew that this was a powerful song, this was a jam, and they were to be proved right. Kristen McVie, on the other hand, she had a different perspective. While her marriage was over, she fell in love with one of the crews of the band, the lighting director. It was just, I cannot imagine what was going on in that band, It was like a family. Everyone was just like interchanging. That's just totally crazy. Anyway, the relationship with the lighting director gave back to the song You Make Loving Fun, another great song from the album. It was a song of pure, unadulterated joy and optimism, a bright spot in an album filled with darkness. Now, on the other hand, for John McVie, it was a bitter pill to swallow. Can you imagine having to create and play bass to a song that is celebrating his wife's joy with another man? You cannot think it up. It's incredible stuff, really. But he was said to have channeled his feelings into his playing. He crafted a single melodic and incredibly solid bass line which was the formation to that song. By the way, if you value this deep dives and want a sit at the table to help decide which legends we cover next, join the membership to unlock perks and votes. Now, the recording sessions for Rumours were notoriously grueling, and they stretched late into the night and into the early hours of the morning. So the band adopted a nocturnal schedule, arriving at the studio late in the afternoon and working until sunrise. This disorienting lifestyle detached them from normal rhythms. I know the feeling. I had to get into sleep myself. The tension in the air, the emotional disability, the odd lifestyle made things more volatile, but at the same time, it made them creatively open. The best ideas came when they were all like tired at 4 a.m., 3 a.m. in the morning. The relentless fatigue was now taking its toll, and the tension at the studio continued at home, where things even escalated. This ensured that tension was always in the air, be it at home or be it in the studio. It was hard for the band to sleep. It was said that when they got sleep, it became like a luxury. But the emotional breakdowns, that became a regular thing. Also, remember, they were trying to follow up a successful album, so the pressure to deliver a successful album became immense. It was hard enough trying to follow up a successful album without no emotional traumas. To have all that emotional traumas, all that tension, fighting, anxiety, when you add it together with the pressure and tension of making the album, you can imagine what it felt like in the studio and at home as well. The producers could see what was happening, and they wanted to capture the emotional charged atmosphere and its performances I generated. Also, whilst all this was going on, there was also the painstaking task of getting all this down technically. It was said to have been a very, very difficult album to put together. For example, they said getting the sound right on mixed drums while creating the song Dreams involved endless experimentation, and it took a long time to get that sound and get everything down as they planned to. The producers said they had to work really hard for them to get the iconic, subtle, and hypnotic sound they got for the song Dreams. They said they wanted the sound to be warm, clean, and sound like the band were like playing right there in your living room. As a result of this plan, they stepped away from effects and they concentrated more on raw sounds and raw performances, both vocally and instrument-wise. Another part of making the album that was very, very tasking was the recording of harmonies. Those famous 3-part harmonies of Fleetwood Mac, they didn't come by easily. They had to be carefully put together, the technicians, the engineers, the producers, to get that perfect blend of harmonies that you hear, that give you the chills. It was something. So doing all this with all the madness that was going on in the studio was not an easy thing, but they managed to pull it off. But as usual, after night becomes day. Eventually, it was time to release the album, and in February of 1977, the album was finally released, and the impact it had was staggering and unbelievable. The album shot to the top of the charts in the United States, and it was number 1 on the Billboard charts for 31 weeks. And the singles, you could not get away from them. Go Your Own Way, that became a rock anthem. You could not get away from it from the radio. Dreams was haunting and so beautiful. It became the band's only number 1 hit single in the US. I still find that hard to believe. I don't know how that happened. Not only do I find it hard, I think on the Rumours album itself, there should have been at least 3 or 4 number 1s on it. Don't Stop was a universal message. Even today, you hear that song being used in all sorts of ways. One of the most famous ways it's been used is political campaigns, or when people are doing things that is progressive, that song will always play. How many years later is that? 77. That's almost 50 years. Incredible. The album became the soundtrack of a generation, a cultural phenomenon. It was just unreal. Nobody expected that. The band themselves didn't expect it. And when stories started to come out, how the songs were made and what they represented, people could not believe that with all that going on, the band could put together a masterpiece as such. It went on to sell over 40 million copies worldwide, one of the best-selling albums of all times. And at times when an album is so popular, uh, the critical acclaim doesn't always favor it. But this album, the critics, they loved it. So it was a winner in every sense. The album won the highest honor by becoming the winner, the album of the year at the Grammys the following year, 1978. The critics, they praised the raw honesty of the music, they loved the flawless production, and they loved the immaculate songwriting. It was also said that when people realized what the album was about, it added to the legend of the album, and people were buying the album as well. It was as if they had a front row seat to the happenings in the band. I mean, imagine today with the internet. Imagine like a famous couple who broke up, and they release an album that captures all that happened in the relationship. You can imagine how people will go on and embrace that album, trying to see what the dynamics of that relationship was about. This time, it's two couples, four people, so that's a bigger podium. And the fans, the audience, they loved it, they gobbled it up. And this connection between the art and the artists' lives created a bond that was unbreakable with the audience. But despite the success of the album, the scars from the session of the Rumours album remained with the band. The success of the album did not take care or erase the betrayals or mend the broken hearts. It simply papered the cracks with silky sheets and all the luxury things that money and success can buy. But deep down, the scars were still there. And even if they wanted to forget about it, it was hard to, because for years and years, the band had to perform the songs. And if you keep on performing the songs, the memory, you keep on hearing all those things that happened, and it's hard for you to get away from it. I mean, you can imagine Lindsay and Stevie singing that song, You Can Go Your Own Way, night after night, what it must do to them. There was a famous video on YouTube where the band were performing, and you could see the looks that they gave each other while performing that song. Fans have been debating that. Some says it's real, some says they were just acting on stage. I don't think they were acting on stage. I think that look was real. It came from a real deep and painful place. That song was reopening wounds every night for those two. The music of Rumours is a perfect paradox. Which breakup song from Rumours do you think had the most emotional impact? Which song hit you most? Let me know in the comment section. And I'd like to thank you all for staying with me this long and watching. My name is Harry. I hope you enjoy that. If you're yet to subscribe, I hope you do so. And I hope to see you next time. Stay cool and stay safe and stay beautiful in your heart and soul. Take care. Bye.